This week, we're taking a look at players that should be avoided in 2016 fantasy football drafts. To help us, we have Jon Collins of Fantasy Sports Locker Room. Jon, based on current value, give us a wide receiver and tight end that you'll be avoiding in fantasy drafts this season.
Whether you consider this an indictment of the New York Jets passing game or of the player himself, I'm going ahead and going on record as saying I'm staying away from Eric Decker this year. You're paying for him at wide receiver 25 or pick 54 in the draft, and that's actually considerably less than what his 2015 production should suggest. He was wide receiver 13 in standard leagues last year, but I don't think that the draft day cost is really catching up with the opportunity loss for Eric Decker this year. I know we're getting that discount, but I really think it's going to be hard for him to keep up the production. He caught just 60 balls last year and turned in a touchdown on every 5 receptions and had 16.5 yards per catch as well. Those numbers are going to be hard for him to keep up just in terms of pace, whether everything's back as it should be or as it was last year in New York, and I don't think that's going to be the case. We all know that they haven't settled on their starting quarterback yet, or perhaps they have and they just haven't told Ryan Fitzpatrick. But either way, they got 31 touchdown passes from that position last year. I think it's going to be hard for either Fitzpatrick or Geno Smith or any combination of quarterbacks to reproduce that this year. And then when you look a little deeper than that, he and Brandon Marshall at 12 and 14 touchdowns respectively caught 26 of those 31 total touchdowns. That's 83.8% of the touchdown passes from Ryan Fitzpatrick that last year, and I don't think that's a number that's likely to be repeated. I think what you're going to see is a heavy dose of Matt Forte, at least for this season. You're going to see maybe some growth in guys like Devin Smith and Jason Merrill, and you're going to just see that overall production come down, and on top of that, Decker's share of production come down. I think Brandon Marshall has some gas left in the tank. You should see him with maybe borderline top 10 wide receiver numbers, but I'm anxious to think that the two of them can stay productive, and I think that that comes at Eric Decker's expense this year. My pick for a tight end bust is going to come to no surprise to anybody who watched games with me and watched me stubbornly rail against this guy in the early part of the season and then just curse him as he kept up production in the late part of the season. And my tight end to stay away from is Gary Barnidge. At TE8 and pick 83, I think you're paying an awful lot for a guy that we've seen one season of production from and one season of out-of-nowhere production. I know he's done it, but it's been once. And now he's got a very interesting situation in Cleveland with a new head coach and with a run-heavy philosophy. And of course, continued concerns at quarterback. None of that to me sounds like a recipe for a top 12 tight end season. Then they've added Corey Coleman, where he's presumed to be the focus. I know there's some acclimation to the pro game there, but he's going to be the guy they want to drive the offense through, not an average tight end talent. You're going to see Hugh Jackson work with Duke as he did with Gio in Cincinnati. You're going to see a mix of Isaiah Crowell, and I think you'll see Cleveland be a run-heavy team based on the talent they have and based on the coaching staff. Listen, Gary Barnidge isn't a guy that you build a passing game around. He had roughly 25% of the team's receiving yards last year, and he caught 9 of their 20 touchdown receptions last year. I think that those overall numbers, 4,000 or so passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, whether it's Robert Griffin or otherwise, at quarterback, are fair to project. I just don't think it's logical to think that Gary Barnidge is going to own the lion's share of those again. I'm much more interested in a guy like Ladarius Green, who has a new opportunity in Pittsburgh, or Antonio Gates, who they remain committed to for one more season in San Diego at that stage of the draft, than I am in Barnidge, who's coming off an injury and who has a change in offensive focus and a change in the pieces around him. I'm saying it this year. No thanks.
Check out what all the experts think by viewing our NFL Expert Consensus rankings, and be sure to prepare for your upcoming fantasy football drafts by practicing with our free mock draft simulator tool, both available at fantasypros.com.